In this video, we will contrast two different conceptions of reading. One is the one you've probably heard of in the educational context, which takes reading to be a rich, situated activity. So when a child reads a particular text in a particular occasion, then there are child-related features of this activity. So the child's attitudes, motivation for reading, expectations from reading, the child's abilities and skills related to reading, the child's knowledge both about reading and about the topic being read. Then there is also the text itself, the text's meaning, the text's coherence and cohesion, the text's implications, and the text's connotations. There is also the situation in which this is taking place. So the context, the roles, the goals, and the priorities that are associated with this particular instance of reading activity. This is a very fine view of reading. However, it is not going to help you understand dyslexia. What is wrong with this view is nothing. There is nothing wrong with this view. It is actually a very appropriate view for thinking concretely about particular children, texts, and situations. And this view is very important and critical for clinically working with specific children who have specific needs in specific situations, and so on. However, this view is both too specific to individuals and situations and too complex in involving so many different factors that it cannot help you understand the mental workings of reading at a sufficiently abstract level so that you can identify what is generally going on and what might be wrong with that. So too specific and too complex. To understand dyslexia, what it is, how it manifests itself, and how you can deal with it in its particular manifestations, you should not think about specific children and concrete situations. Now, we are not talking about understanding and dealing with the particular needs of a particular child. Here, we're talking about understanding dyslexia in general, understanding what reading disability or reading difficulties are about, why, how they can be approached, assessed, and what you can do about them. So in this general understanding, you should not be thinking about individual children and concrete situations like you will be doing in clinical work. To understand what dyslexia is about, you should be thinking about mental operation. So you should be taking the approach of cognitive information processing and conceive of reading as cognitive information processing. This means you should be thinking about cognitive mechanisms. So what does this mean? It means that you should be conceiving of the mind and how the mind works as having parts or components that stand in specific functional relations to one another. Which mind? Well, every mind. Your mind, my mind, every mind. You should think of human minds as similar kinds of machines with similar components that stand in similar relations so that they perform similar functions in similar ways. Minds process information, and this information is called representation because representations in the mind stand for things. They can be representation of things we know about, representations of concepts, representations of words, representations of anything. And the components of the mind process this information, and this involves potentially different stages of processing, so doing something before something else, different procedures and operations. So how is this information handled and what does the mind do with it? This is called an abstract computational approach. Abstract because it is not about anything specific. It abstracts away from any instance and from any individual, and that's on purpose. And it's called computational because this information processing is a way of computing another kind of information. So it's viewing the mind as a special kind of computer, nothing to do with your laptop or with the digital computers we have or with your phone. But it's a computer in the sense that it computes information based on other kinds of information. Now, I realize this sounds very abstract, but that is exactly the point. I want you to be thinking about reading in a depersonalized, decontextualized, and general way. So not be thinking about anyone in particular or about a specific situation. Think about the abstract mind, anybody's mind, and the operations by which this abstract mind might achieve the reading functions, which means we're going to have to discuss what these reading functions can be and how they can be achieved. And this is something we'll be concerned with in this course. In general, this approach aims to understand and explain behavior in a systematic way by invoking mental mechanisms and producing what are called cognitive theories of psychological phenomena. So how the mind's components work in relation to one another to process information and achieve specific functional outcomes.